The article came out in October of 2007. Already a third of the mortgages defaulted. Now, most of them are gone.
One group that had purchased these now worthless securities was the Public Employees Retirement System of Mississippi, which provides monthly benefits to over 80,000 retirees. They lost millions of dollars. By late 2006, Goldman had taken things a step further. It didn't just sell toxic CDOs. It started actively betting against them at the same time it was telling customers that they were high-quality investments. By purchasing credit default swaps from AIG, Goldman could bet against CDOs it didn't own and get paid when the CDOs failed.
I asked if anybody called the customers and said, you know, we don't really like this kind of mortgage anymore, and we thought you ought to know. And, you know, they didn't really say anything, but, you know, you just feel the laughter coming over the phone.
Goldman Sachs bought at least $22 billion of credit default swaps from AIG. It was so much that Goldman realized that AIG itself might go bankrupt. So they spent $150 million insuring themselves against AIG's potential collapse. Then, in 2007, Goldman went even further. They started selling CDOs specifically designed so that the more money their customers lost, the more money Goldman Sachs made.
Is there not a conflict when you sell something to somebody and then are determined to bet against that same security and you don't disclose that to the person you're selling it? Do you see a problem?
In the context of market making, that is not a conflict.
Hedge fund manager John Paulson made $12 billion betting against the mortgage market. When Paulson ran out of mortgage securities to bet against, he worked with Goldman Sachs and Deutsche Bank to create more of them. Morgan Stanley was also selling mortgage securities that it was betting against. Although they were rated AAA, Morgan Stanley was betting they would fail. A year later, Morgan Stanley had made hundreds of millions of dollars, while the investors had lost almost all of their money.
None of these securities got issued without the imprimatur, the good housekeeping seal of approval of the rating agencies.
The three rating agencies, Moody's, S&P, and Fitch, made billions of dollars giving high ratings to risky securities. Moody's, the largest rating agency, quadrupled its profits between 2000 and 2007.
Moody's and S&P get compensated based on putting out ratings reports, and the more structured securities they gave a AAA rating to, the higher their earnings were going to be for the quarter. Imagine if you went to the New York Times and you say, look, if you write a positive story, I'll pay you $500,000. But if you don't, I'll give you nothing.
The rating agencies could have stopped the party and said, we're sorry, we're going to tighten our standards. And immediately cut off a lot of the flow of funding to risky borrowers.
AAA rated instruments mushroomed from just a handful to thousands and thousands.
Hundreds of billions of dollars.
I've now testified before both houses of Congress on the credit rating agency issue, and both times they trot out very prominent First Amendment lawyers and argue that when we say something is rated AAA, that is merely our opinion. You shouldn't rely on it.
S&P's ratings express our opinion.
Our ratings are our opinions. They're opinions.
Opinions, and they are just opinions.
I think we are emphasizing the fact that our ratings are our opinions.
They do not speak to the market value of a security, the volatility of its price, or its suitability as an investment.
We have so many economists coming on our air and saying, oh, this is a bubble and it's going to burst and this is going to be a real issue for the economy. Some say it could even cause a recession at some point. What is the worst case scenario if, in fact, we were to see prices come down substantially across the country?
Well, I guess I don't buy your premise. It's a pretty unlikely possibility. We've never had a decline in house prices on a nationwide basis.
Ben Bernanke became chairman of the Federal Reserve Board in February 2006, the top year for subprime lending. But despite numerous warnings, Bernanke and the Federal Reserve Board did nothing. Robert Gneizda met with Ben Bernanke and the Federal Reserve Board 3 times after Bernanke became chairman.
Only at the last meeting did he suggest that there was a problem and that the government ought to look into it.
One of the 6 Federal Reserve Board governors serving under Bernanke was Frederick Mishkin, who was appointed by President Bush in 2006.
Did you participate in these semi-annual meetings that Robert Gneizda and Greenlining had with the Federal Reserve Board?
Yes, I did. I was actually on the committee that was involved with that, the Consumer and Community Affairs Committee.
As early as 2004, the FBI was already warning about an epidemic of mortgage fraud. They reported inflated appraisals, doctored loan documentation, and other fraudulent activity. In 2005, the IMF's chief economist, Raghuram Rajan, warned that dangerous incentives could lead to a crisis. Then came Nouriel Roubini's warnings in 2006, Alan Sloan's articles in Fortune magazine and the Washington Post in 2007, and repeated warnings from the IMF.
I say that on behalf of the institution, the crisis which is in front of us is a huge crisis.
Who did you talk to?
The government, Treasury, Fed, everybody.
In May of 2007, hedge fund manager Bill Ackman circulated a presentation called Who's Holding the Bag, which described how the bubble would unravel. And in early 2008, Charles Morris published his book about the impending crisis.
You're just not sure, what do you do? And you might have some suspicions that underwriting standards are being weakened, but then the question is, should you do anything about it?
By 2008, home foreclosures were skyrocketing, and the securitization food chain imploded. Lenders could no longer sell their loans to the investment banks, and as the loans went bad, dozens of lenders failed.
Chuck Prince of Citibank famously said that we have to dance until the music stops. Actually, the music had stopped already when he said that.
The market for CDOs collapsed, leaving the investment banks holding hundreds of billions of dollars in loans, CDOs, and real estate they couldn't sell.
When the crisis started, both the Bush administration and the Federal Reserve were totally behind the curve. They did not understand the extent of it.
At what point do you remember thinking for the first time, this is dangerous, this is bad?
I remember very well I think it was a G7 meeting of February 2008, and I remember discussing the issue with Hank Paulson. And I clearly remember telling Hank, we are watching this tsunami coming, and you just proposing that we ask which swimming costume we're going to put on.
What was his response? What was his feeling?
Things are pretty much under control. Yes, we are looking at this situation carefully, and yeah, it's under control.
We're going to keep growing, okay? And obviously, I'll say it, if you're growing, you're not in recession, right? I mean, we all know that.
In a matter of days, one of the pillars of Wall Street...
In March of 2008, the investment bank Bear Stearns ran out of cash and was acquired for $2 a share by JP Morgan Chase. The deal was backed by $30 billion in emergency guarantees from the Federal Reserve.
That was the time when the administration could have come in and put in place, various kinds of measures that would have reduced system risk.
On September 7th, 2008, Henry Paulson announced the federal takeover of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, 2 giant mortgage lenders on the brink of collapse.
Nothing about our actions today in any way reflects a changed view of the housing correction or the strength of other U.S. financial institutions.
2 days later, Lehman Brothers announced record losses of $3.2 billion, and its stock collapsed.
The effects of Lehman and AIG in September still came as a surprise. I mean, this is even after July and Fannie and Freddie. So clearly there was stuff that as of September, major stuff, that nobody knew about.
I think that's fair.
Bear Stearns was rated AAA like a month before it went bankrupt?
More likely A2.
A2?
Yeah.
Okay. A2 is still not bankrupt.
No, it's a high investment grade, solid investment grade rating. Lehman Brothers, A2 within days of failing. AIG, AA within days of being bailed out. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were AAA when they were rescued. Citigroup, Merrill, all of them had investment grade ratings.
How can that be?
Well, that's a good question.
Governor Fred Mishkin is resigning effective August 31. He says he plans to return to his teaching post at Columbia's Graduate School of Business.
Why did you leave the Federal Reserve in August of 2008? I mean, in the middle of the worst financial crisis.
I had to revise a textbook.
His departure leaves the Fed board with 3 of its 7 seats vacant, just when the economy needs it most.
By Friday, September 12th, Lehman Brothers had run out of cash, and the entire investment banking industry was sinking fast. The stability of the global financial system was in jeopardy. That weekend, Henry Paulson and Timothy Geithner, president of the New York Federal Reserve, called an emergency meeting with the CEOs of the major banks in an effort to rescue Lehman. But Lehman wasn't alone. Merrill Lynch, another major investment bank, was also on the brink of failure. And that Sunday, it was acquired by Bank of America. The only bank interested in buying Lehman was the British firm Barclays. But British regulators demanded a financial guarantee from the US government. Paulson refused.